Choose your fighter.
And we're on. How you doing, guys? Another episode of KPBCast here. This is KPB Raphael. With me, I have another old school New York East Coast legend. And this is going to be somewhat of a companion episode with Nick, our summonings episode. Well, who we have here right now is James MK. Sir, how the hell are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. You know, just trying to avoid the COVID and working and doing the life thing.
And once again, man, we here want to thank you for doing this episode. We really look forward to hearing some of your stories, some of your life experiences in the gaming industry.
I'll be happy to share what I can.
Now,
I don't
before
have
we
any NDAs anymore.
before we started the episode. You had said you've been gaming since 1975, 5 years old at arcades.
Yeah.
Take us through that, man. You're 5 years old. Was that your first real experience with arcades? I mean, heck, even before you take us through your experience with arcades, where you decided this is what you're gonna, this is what you're gonna be focusing on a lot. I guess it is the question. Take us through that. What was it like going in there and just seeing this machine blaring music? And what machine was it?
The first arcade game I played was actually a skeet shooting game, which it had like in high school, the film screen that you would pull down.
Right.
It was basically based on that, and you each had a rifle, and it was just skeets that got shot. And I had seen that in a bowling alley at my cousin's 8th birthday. And I played that. And then the other game that I played was Atari Xo Football, which is a tabletop version of football. Basically X's and O's, and you had roller balls. You had like 4 plays you could choose from. And from the minute I seen them, it was, again, for me, I was, believe it or not, as much of a big mouth as I have now, I wasn't always a big mouth person. I was actually very introverted. And what captivated me with gaming was I could play these games and have somewhere I felt like I fit in. I wasn't a jock. I wasn't a burnout. I was just kind of there. I was always into technology. Whether it was back then ham radios and CBs, before PCs came out. And then, my father would do a pizza Friday every Friday. And next to the pizzeria was an arcade. And they had, your typical Space Invaders and, that Atari Xo Football, games like Omega Race, a lot of the vector-based graphic games at that time.
Right.
Asteroids. And it just, the crowd that was in there, because 75 to like 85 was like the pickup of where arcades really began. So because it was new, it was, a lot of people were in there. If you watch movies like, I don't know, remember the Bad News Bears, the original one?
Of course.
When Kelly Leaks challenges Tatum O'Neal to air hockey.
Yes.
Even there you saw that crowd. And, once you did good at a game, people stopped playing their games to go, oh, what is this person doing? And that was like the beginning of the crowd. And the crowd, listen, here I am, 6 years old, and I got a crowd of people around me watching me play a game. It was like, it filled that void of, wow, people accept me.
Let me ask you a question.
And they like me.
Quick question regarding that. You talked that there's manual games, and then there's video games, or at least how we know them, like you said, asteroids. But
Yes.
You also mentioned you felt like you belonged here, like you had people there that obviously have the same likes as you. Explain to that for our viewers. Like what kind of people are you talking about? Is it people where you felt it's like I said, this is our likes, so I feel already welcomed here. Like again, you're 6 years old. Explain that feeling to us.
You know what it is? It's like a adrenaline / dopamine rush, because again, I was in my neighborhood. I was I was the dirtbag, or kids didn't want to hang out with me. And quite honestly, I didn't want to hang out with them. I was always the type of person, if you can't accept me, then fuck you, leave me alone. And going into this, some of those very same people who didn't accept me, and this is where video games to me has been a big play in my life, where it builds a bond. That kid that didn't like me, all of a sudden, hey Jimmy, how did you score 100,000 in Pac-Man? And now all of a sudden you're building a bond, and it was just that rush that, like, whether they were the Guidos, the girls, this myth about the girls is gamers. There's always been girls in the arcade. I know girls from back then that were flipping asteroids. And it was everything outside of the arcade. You go outside the arcade, every person in the arcade hates you still. But when you're in that arcade, everybody's the same. That same nerd comes out of everybody. I want to escape reality. You hate going to work. Well, guess what? Now you get to be a knight and slash a bunch of monsters and wind up saving a princess. For that limited amount of time in your life, for that limited amount of quarters that you have in your pocket, you can escape reality.
So by all means, kind of like how we're seeing with the NBA and the NHL, it was a bubble. It's like, this is our escape. When we go inside these doors and, the music and everything just hits you straight on, you guys experienced a different world. Everything outside of this bubble just doesn't exist. This is where we all come together and enjoy what we enjoy, right?
Yes, exactly. You go to a football game and you sit, and there might be 20 people sitting behind you that you told them to go F off. But now all 21 of you are Giant fans. So at least for that moment in time, you're all best buddies. You might walk out in the parking lot after and get into a fight again, but for that, for those 4 quarters, you're all brothers. And that it's always intrigued me, for the simple fact that it's such a diverse group of people, just like the FGC. People like to bounce back and forth with the FGC being accepting this and that. There's a lot of debate about that, but the fact of the matter is this: you go to an FGC event, you'll see every mix of race, every religion, every walk of life, every sexual orientation. And for that time, those 3 days of an event, you're all hanging out, outside the venue, bullshitting, talking about games, talking about strategy, and it really is something magical, but it's also starting to become lost.
Let me ask you this question, considering you say your father took you over there. What did he think of it? Did he see you, well, my son is happy, let me keep giving him a few dollars to, waste some quarters on? Or was he one of those parents, like many parents that we've seen, where it's like, nah, video games, I don't want him to be addicted to this, where this is just a complete, it was both of them. So, yeah, go ahead into details about that for us.
So basically, my father is the type of guy, and he, me and my brother and him talk about it to today, and he was the type of guy, he said it to us just recently: I don't give a fuck if you played in traffic and got ran over by 50 cars. Just make sure mom don't hear about it. Because when mom hears about it, she's going to bitch and moan and groan, and then I got to get mad. And he just didn't want to get mad. So, for me, that pizzeria next to the arcade next to the pizzeria for Pizza Friday, you order a pie, it takes, a pie and a pasta dish, it takes 15, 20 minutes, a half hour. That was his utopia. That was 15, 20 minutes without having to hear my fucking mouth. So he wasn't against games. But then from like 75 to 80, the increase of arcade machines is when my mother started to question it. Don't play those stupid fucking games. I'll never forget it. My mother used to smoke cigarettes. They were called Vantage. nastiest cigarettes because it was the first cigarette I ever smoked. But back then, all the laws and rules and regulations didn't exist. So, we lived near a 7-Eleven. All my mom did is wrote a note, hey, please sell my son a pack of Vantas. And she gave me, $2. Well, guess what? Inside 7-Eleven, there was a little alcove on the side that had games too. Now, the cigarettes were $1.50. That left me 50 cents to spend. I would do it nonstop. And then, my mother would go, where's my change? Oh, I lost it on the way home. I dropped it.
Did you
You're
have
playing those fucking games?
No, you had holes in your pockets, right?
Exactly. I lost it. I don't know what happened. And then I got greedy. Then I started gambling with people. Like young. I was gambling like 8 years old with they called the area where the 7-Eleven was. In fact, you ever listen to Billy Joel?
Of course, yes.
Okay. The song, The Italian Restaurant. All right. Brenda and Eddie, the regular steady at the Green. The Green, he's from Levittown, where I grew up.
Right.
That's the Green he's talking about.
Wow.
And the dealers used to hang out up there. So, I'd play a dealer. I'll play you for 50 cents. And I whooped their ass. Sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I forgot to buy the cigarettes first. So now I'm coming home empty-handed with no money and those cigarettes. And my mother knew he's playing those fucking games. And then my grandfather and my mother hated each other. So what did my grandfather do? He bought us our first home system, which was a Magnavox Odyssey.
Wow.
And it made us and made them play it, and we played it religiously. And it annoyed my mother because back then, one TV in the house. This technology era, didn't exist. And we're trying to, come on, Mom, let us play Pong. No. And then finally one day, I think me and my brother picked up a TV that somebody threw out. And my other grandfather was a TV repairman. So my grandpa fixed this TV for me. So he did. I come home with a TV at 8 years old. My mother's like, how does my fucking idiot son come home with a TV at 8 years old? So, but as it evolved, when NES came out, when Atari 2600 came out, my mother's attitude changed a little bit, and so did my father. They actually played Pac-Man. My mother played one game of Pac-Man, the 2600 version, to the point where she got blisters on her fingers and played it 24 hours one game.
What changed her mind? Why did
I
she
never
have this change?
knew what changed her mind. I never knew what changed her mind. My father, like I said, my father was always kind of cool with games because he was like, hey, listen, they're games. My father's like, it's like playing poker, and if my mother liked it, then he's like, all right, cool, I like it too. So he would play, and they played Zelda. My mother finished Zelda.
Wow.
My mother was big with Tetris. My mother was playing Peggles. I mean, my mother's been, she's definitely had her understanding of it. I think the biggest thing that won her over, though, is when I got older and I took the job with Acclaim.
Nice.
Because that was where things really dramatically changed, where they were like, oh, shit, there's something to this.
So basically it was one of those, he got a job making video games or whatever it is that you did with Acclaim. It was like, well, look, he's getting a paycheck, so I guess this wasn't a complete waste of time.
My first year at Acclaim, I was given stocks when I came in. And you were given them in the form of options, which meant you were only allowed to sell a third a year.
Right.
You can't just say, hey, give me all the money. I had sold the stock at like $29 a share. I sold like 10,000 shares. That was Christmas. That Christmas. Now, keep in mind, before I was working there, my father, I'm out of high school. My father had got me a job with the phone company. And, my father was old school. You work at 9 to 5, get on the fucking train, go to work, come home. And I quit. And my father almost put me through a wall. You quit the fucking job I give to play video games, you fucking idiot. Da, 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 da. You would be making so much money. Da, 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 da. And then that Christmas, I bought everybody Movado watches. So my brother, my sister, my father, my mother all got Movado watches. Basically $25,000 worth of jewelry. And then all of a sudden, maybe there's something to this business. And I would always say to them that this business is growing. And it's going to continue to grow. And then they basically accepted it at that point. Then they were like even now, my mother will catch my show or something. You're being a fucking idiot again, I see. She'll still do it to me. But she knows, I do my thing.
Going back a little bit before we get to the these topics, you mentioned cigarettes were $1.50. You had 50 cents. I'm sure the machines were either 50 cents or a quarter.
No, just a quarter.
Oh, just a quarter. Well, I asked everybody this so far that's been on this show that had experience with the arcade scene, and I'm gonna ask you, how much was it that you made sure that those quarters, lasted a long time? Because you said it yourself, you were decided to play some people for gambling, or maybe you went to your local arcade as well to just, get some games in. How much was it? Like, how important was it to make sure that money lasted so that way?
All right. So I'll explain it like this. So I remember it had to have been around 1981 or 82. And, the arcade was a pretty good walk for me to get to. And I cannot tell a lie. Every once in a while, I would trip and fall, and my hand would land in my mom's pocketbook. And I would take a couple of bucks and go to the arcade. But my mother was always on point. She could tell. I got the gift now too. You could sit on that end of the screen right now and drop a bunch of coins, and I could tell you 6 nickels, 2 quarters, and a dime. But I picked that up from her. So this one particular day. And again, I think I took $1. That's it, just $1. Now that's 4 games for me. And I remember the game that I was playing was a Vectrex-based game, Black Widow. And I wound up playing and losing fast. I don't know what happened. Now at this time, you know what? It was actually, I'll correct myself. It was actually straight 1980, because the reason I remember is my father had made us play Pee Wee football, and I was in 10-year-old football when this happened, and right. I had practice that day, and practices was like 4:00, and now it's like 1:00, and I'd eventually have to go home and get picked up. So I go into the arcade, I put my quarter in, lose in 2 seconds, I'm pissed. How can that happen? I'm one of the greatest players. Yeah. Put it again. Boom. Lose again. Put it again. Lose again. On my last quarter, I said, you know what? I'm not going to play that. You know what game I went and played? Kangaroo. Do you remember Kangaroo?
I believe one of the yes.
You had to walk a kangaroo up to the top to save the baby kangaroo, and there was a bell that you punched and it changed the fruit. So I was like, all right, well, at least I know I could play this and last a while. Well, what happens? I go and I play and I get blown up. This is funny because this made me believe in God. So now I'm walking out of the arcade and I'm pissed. And I shit you not, I look up to the sky and I go, God, can I just have $1? And I look down on the ground and I see $1 bill. I can't make this shit up. So now I'm like, oh shit. I walk back in the arcade. I go right back to fucking Black Widow. I get blown up again. Now I'm walking out. And of course, in my head right away, I'm like, holy shit. I just asked God for $1 and he gave it to me. So now I'm saying to myself, well, I'm going to walk the same exact path that I did. And I'm going to ask God again. I'm like, God, I don't want to be greedy. I know I shouldn't. But you think maybe I can get another $1? I look down on the ground in that same spot. I see another $1 bill and another $1 bill. In a 5 spot. For a 10-year-old, that's $7. I'm like, woo. Now I'm playing games and I don't even give a shit if I lose money. I'm like, I got $7, you know. But, you know, going back to the original point, yeah, it was so important that I was asking God, please, let me have another dollar. I can make this last. It was always important, you know, because I was always, like Nitin had said, we're all very competitive in nature.
Right.
You know, whether you're playing a one-player game, a fighting game, or a two-player alternating turn type game like Pac-Man or Donkey Kong, the competition, you know, whether even in a one-player game to beat the high score, is that fire is what that's the dopamine. That's the rush to get that high score. You know, they used to put the person with the high score at the end of the week. They would get their fucking name on top of the cabinet, so you knew, you know, little Billy or little Jimmy did it, and that was your goal. And they would give, you know, 2 free slices of pizza next door to the guy who gets the award. So there was even some motivation to it. So
Actually,
yeah, so lasting on money is important.
Mm-hmm. No, go ahead, finish.
No, I'm saying lasting on a quarter was always important.
Actually, I was about to ask regarding, you just said it was all about high score. And by all means, that was the competition in those days, right? You know, alternating one-player games what's it called, Centipede. I used to play that with my brother all the time. And, I mean, it wasn't always fighting games all the time. Like you said, I mean, by all means, back then, it was just about high scores. That was the competition, wasn't that?
Yeah, that's really what it came down to is basically score.
So between your time when you find the arcade, your dad takes you there, and by the time you finish high school, before you get inside the phone company, like you said, did you always have a feeling that you may end up, you know, working for the video game company, or was it just all fun and games for you? Or again, did you have any aspirations to try to get yourself within the industry?
Me being the nerd that I was, you know, I mean, back in 1980, I had a PC already. You know, I had the ham radio. I knew I was destined to make games. Now, life changed, life happens. But from the onset, I've always, I write scripts on the side. You know, I love the entertainment aspect of it, not the competitiveness. You know, yeah, the competitiveness, you know, I'm competitive, but that's not what gravitates me towards the games. You know, that's why I talk to a lot of the guys now and I'm like, oh man, I can't fucking believe the MK11 story ended like this. This is stupid. What do you mean? I never played it. Wait, you're a pro gamer, pro MK guy. You never did the story? No, I never did one. So you don't even know what the hell happens in the story. You just find the dumb character and play. I said, I'm not that way. If the story is not good, there's no reason to continue it. Make it MK1 and make it a finite ending. Liu Kang kills Shang Tsung, match is over. Done. No more. Nothing to do. You know, but that story, you know, as captivating as it was, gave the ability for part 2.
Right.
Shang did get beat. Now they go, well, he got beat. He didn't get killed. And now he got some youth shoved in his ass. And now he's, you know, younger. But now you find out he actually works for somebody else.
I know what you mean, man, because a lot of people seem to forget the video games are a form of entertainment. You know,
They absolutely are.
I mean, I absolutely enjoyed the Mortal Kombat 9 storyline. Actually, when I first bought Mortal Kombat 9, that's the first thing I went into. I wanted to see, let's see what they done, because we know the previous games, they were just all over the place. And the MK9 storyline definitely, you know, delivered, in my opinion. And then I played MKX, and it's just like, what the heck happened? You know? Like, what the heck happened?
I see what on a business, you know, on the the video game development side, what captivated me for the MK9 story that really said, let me see what they're going to do, is knowing what the roster was, knowing that it was a reboot of 1, 2, and 3. What had me like, okay, how are you guys going to do this? Well, because if you're going to do Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3 kind of mashed together, Baraka never fought Johnny Cage in the first Mortal Kombat because he
Right.
didn't exist. Kung Lao wasn't there. Cyrax wasn't there. How are you going to, are you just going to lump them in? And I think they did it really well. And from that point on, that's where I fell in love with the game again, because the 3D era, the 3D era is the 3D era, but the MK9 was bring it back. MK1 and 2 are my babies. MK3, I can play it. I can't play it at shock or summoning level, but I can play it. I just never grabbed it. But that story is the most important part of that game to me.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
So to see what 9 did, and then like you said, when I played MKX, I'm like, are you trying to make this like MK4? Because it's not.
No. Oh, trust me. We'll get to some of that stuff. Something I should have asked you before you decided to make your quest into wanting to become a industry member. You said you had some consoles growing up as well. What was how much time did you dedicate to the home consoles, and then you decided to say, you know what, I actually have more fun at the arcade? Because eventually the consoles, they surpassed arcade hardware. Back then, I'm pretty sure they weren't even coming close because those consoles were so underpowered compared to arcades even back then.
It was one of the reasons why my parents felt it was a problem, because I couldn't get enough of the arcade or the console. When I went home, I sat on the console. When I got a PC, I was playing Zork, text-based Zork, typing out, playing Flight Simulator back in 1980 on a monochrome screen, and listen, 8, 10 years old, I'm playing golf. Who the fuck cares? What 10-year-old wants to play? It's a stupid, boring game where you're hitting a ball into a hole, but on the video screen, it's better. I don't want to go out on a golf course and hit it and chase a ball in a fucking cart, but I can sit there and do the golf on the screen. Even back then, they had it. It was, pretty two-dimensional and just, a little white dot for the ball, and, you toggle through your clubs, But ironically, Flight Simulator was probably my first console game that got me hooked. And even back then, you could fly real time. So, the one thing a lot of people don't realize about Flight Simulator is if you say, hey, I want to fly to JFK and I want to go to, what's the airport in Topeka, Kansas? The real information is there.
Oh, really?
The coordinates, the lot land, and it's been like that since day one. You fly in New York, you see, back then a version of the Twin Towers and Empire State Building. Of course, the graphics are horrible, but they would accentuate the main things: the Twin Towers, Statue of Liberty, Empire State Building. The rest of it's just green. But if you wanted to fly to France, if it's a 6-hour flight, you got to sit in front of your fucking computer for 6 hours. Which at that point is where it gets touchy-feely. If you go into those games, and I was not one of them that did that, if you go into the games with hey, I just want to fly from New York to France, then you got to look at blue water underneath you for 6 hours. But it let you modify the weather and turbulence. You could tweak it. Let me have the real weather, and it would actually load in. It would download the real weather, thunderstorm all of a sudden, and now it's gotten so bad, like literally you could go on the new Flight Simulator and whatever it's doing outside, when you start the game up at JFK, it's going to be doing it.
Right. That's pretty sophisticated for that kind of hardware back then.
A lot of people, see, it's software driven. That's all software driven. That's the one thing that's beautiful I've always loved about. And then I wanted to be a pilot for a long time. I even took lessons, but I never finished it. So, I had the flight stick, the pedals for the rudders. I had all of that.
Wow.
But that, that time, back in that time, it was like, I think my PC came with 164K of RAM, not even megs, not even gigs, K. And I tried to go to 128, which was like 10 grand.
Jesus.
10 grand for 64 more K of RAM.
And people
But
bitch
the
about
Zork
today's
games,
prices, huh?
I know. Well, I just went today looking at video cards. Trust me, I'm not happy. They ain't cheap at all. I'm like, I don't know what happened to that. A $600 video card is more than the whole PC.
Let me ask you this. You said it yourself. After high school, your father got you a job with the phone company. Um, you said you just didn't like it. Maybe you didn't feel any satisfaction because back then, in those days, and even in some places today, after high school, it's like, oh, you're going to college? No, get yourself a trade. Go, just get into the workforce and just provide for your home. When did you into your tenure inside the phone company? When did you decide, you know what, this is not for me, and I'm just gonna go do my best. I'm gonna do everything to try to get into the video game industry.
All right. So, after high school, I was a fuck up in high school. I mean, I was kicked out of like, I don't know, about 8 schools. Um, and my final year, I did culinary and did the whole Votech thing. I was like, hey, at culinary, I met my girlfriend, and we dated for years. Now I graduate high school, and my father gets me the job. And I'm like, all right, I guess this is life. I'm going to marry this girl and, fucking be a phone guy for the rest of my life. And then it was I can't remember off the top of my head if it was 1989 or 90. I think it was 89. The Nintendo World Championship came out. And I entered. The first time I entered was at the Meadowland. And what it was a combo cartridge. You had to collect 50 coins. Then you had to complete one track of Rad Racer. And then it ended with Tetris. I made top 8, but that was not good enough. So actually, I'm sorry, correct myself. The first one I went to was at the Javits Center.
Right.
And I made top 8 and then they bounced me. That's it. You don't get shit. The second one, I did top 8 again, and I didn't get shit. And I kept choking on Tetris. Then I drove all the way up to Hartford, Connecticut, which is not a short trip.
No, it's not. It's like a 2-hour trip from where you are.
And the same thing, top 8 and didn't get. I go, it's just not meant to be. So my girlfriend turns around to me, and she had a sister who was William Shatner's personal assistant.
Oh, wow.
And William Shatner was friends with the CEO of Acclaim. So she had left that job and said, I'm moving back to New York. And he said, well, why don't you talk to, I'll talk to my friend and I'll get your job there. So she was working as like an admin for the CEO. So once she got in there, my girlfriend was talking to her. Said, yeah, Jimmy, doing this. What? Yeah. So she said, well, let me try to get you in. Now, at the time, I was working for the phone company. Now, I got in. They tested you. Back then, it wasn't just a game player, or a game maker. You were a game counselor too. So you would call way up at 516 Acclaim and be like, hey, I'm playing Rambo and I'm stuck. Can you help me get through it? And they'd be like, okay, Ralphie, let me figure this out. What part are you getting stuck on? And have to coach you through this shit. At the same time, we're making games, so I'd be testing games at the same time I'm talking to you. So when I had told my father I got the job, he, again, the industry's so new, he goes, what are you, a fucking idiot? You're making good money. But I just knew it was where I should go. I knew I was good at it because, and a lot of people, I get it from a lot of young guys now in the FGC. Oh, if I worked for NRS, the games would be great. Everybody says that. I tell everybody the same thing. What makes you laugh doesn't make the rest of the world laugh. That's the difference. It's about making everybody laugh, not yourself. Oh my God, this is the funniest thing. Okay, but it's not for you. The story is not for you. The story is to attract people. Just because you think it's don't write the story of your life and put it in a video game. Nobody's gonna want to say, oh yeah, well in this game you get to go do a 9 to 5. That's fucking boring. I could do that at home for real. And I came up with a lot of good ideas and concepts that even Acclaim's marketing and sales guys, like just a quick spin-off, I'll hit on it more. The Mortal Kombat commercial down on Wall Street. I'm the guy that pitched it to them.
I love that commercial.
I pitched it to them.
That's the best Mortal Kombat commercial ever.
I pitched that to them. The Abacab code, that's all mine. Those are all stuff that I was doing, behind the scenes.
Did you always have that mentality, or did you possibly had a little bit of what you explained, where it's like, well, man, I'm in here, I'm working for Acclaim. Let me show them what it's like. Or did you know right off the bat that this is your job? This is it's a passion of yours. Video games are a passion, and not many people have the guts to chase that passion like you did. Did you know it was your full-time job?
Yeah, I knew that. I mean, like I said, as much as people see my tough, mean exterior, the mobster and all that shit, I'm creative. I mean, come on, remember the Cantaloupe videos?
Yes.
It was shit like that I would do. The whole MLG, putting a bounty on PL. It wasn't to be mean, malicious. I like to entertain. And part of entertaining is creating stuff that entertain. That's why I always felt like video games and movies. I mean, I do acting now on the side, but it's not my 9 to 5. But it's like I like to wow people, whether it's playing Asteroids and flipping it a couple of times, or Mortal Kombat, or doing a movie, or fixing a computer, or whatever it is. I like to the adrenaline rush of people going, holy shit, you're like MacGyver. I love when people say that. Is there anything you don't do? And I'm like, yeah, bleed for 7 days and give birth. Beyond that, I could do it. But it was always in there. Like, I played Atari games, and I'm like, oh, I would have did this, and I would have did that, instead to make this better, and I finally was given a canvas to do it, and I did it well. My time at Acclaim, it was a great time, let down by politics. The reason I left Acclaim is I had basically become like Inspector 69. You know
what?
So
Hold on. Before we get to that, when you got to Acclaim and you realized you made it, it's like, this is what I wanted to do. What kind of projects did they have you working on besides the, hey, Jimmy, what are you doing? Getting stuck doing this.
When I started, one of my first games for SNES was Spider-Man Arcade's Revenge.
I hated that game.
So did I. It was when I came, it was already in full blown. One of the things you got to remember, the way Acclaim was structured, was you did one skill. So Spider-Man, Arcade's Revenge didn't get done on just that. It got done across the board. So there was a Game Boy version, there was a Game Gear version, there was a Master System, the Genesis. It was all the system. So, you're on a team, you're working on 5 different games for 5 different platforms. Plus, those 5 platforms, when you do them for European, is on PAL Signal. So that's 10 games. So you're working on so much, and it became like a baby factory of just trying to bang games out. I worked on, I would say, no less than 500, maybe 600 titles.
And they were all mainly for the home consoles, right?
All consoles.
Did you do any work on any of their arcade games?
No. I was never on the arcade side. By the time I had left, the only thing that I did arcade was when Acclaim was going to do Batman Forever. The Acclaim came up with an arcade division, and they did a Magic the Gathering game and a in a Batman Forever game, and I was involved in that a little bit, and then by that point I had left.
Well, you said it yourself. You worked on almost 500 games. I actually remember you gave me this look as if you wanted to punch me in the face because I told you I actually sat there and beat up Maximum Carnage, that Spider-Man game.
That was another.
I've never gotten that look. You literally looked at me. It's like, wait a minute, you actually sat there and beat that game. It's like, yeah, I actually beat it on a couple of times.
The red cartridge.
Yes, the red cartridge
the red
Spider-Man
cartridge
game.
was my idea.
Mm-hmm.
I told the marketing guys, if we're gonna put dog shit in a box, let's make it look shiny. He goes, what? I said, let's copy Zelda. Instead of doing a gold cartridge, let's put it in a red cartridge. Then all of a sudden, they, and it's funny because then they started doing it with a lot of games, like all their Acclaim sport games. They started doing it in red cartridges, and I'm going, the whole point wasn't to just change the color to be different. It was to give you that feeling of something exclusive. You own something that could be considered a piece of history.
Did you work on the Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 ports of the console games?
My name, James MK, okay, it started with that. So what had happened was, at the time, I was working on WrestleMania and T2, the arcade game. And then this game came in. And what it was Acclaim had a deal with Midway that whatever games they put out in the arcade, we get first dibs on them if we want to put them out to home systems. And I had just told my boss, we had gotten a Total Carnage, which was the sequel to Smash TV. I told my boss, don't do it. It's a piece of garbage. Not that it's a piece of garbage. It's just not going to sell. And he double took me. And then Mortal Kombat came in and they put it next to my cubicle. And all I'm hearing all day, finish him. When it first came out, I didn't touch it. I was a Street Fighter player, not a great one, but I was a Street Fighter one. And for the home systems, they always sucked because all the controllers were 3-button controllers, or doing this shit with the, as Nitin says on his podcast, doing this. It just wasn't the same. It wasn't the same. So they put this game in front of me, and I'm trying to work, which we got deadlines. And, my boss asked me, do you think it's a good game? I said, absolutely. He goes, good. I want you to focus on this. All right. And let me just finish these games up. And, once these are done, we'll roll to that. No. You get all right. So now I'm trying to finish those games before I start Mortal Kombat. And fucking, you're trying to work. And guys in the marketing and sales would come down the product development. Hey, come on, check out this game. And they're playing. And at this time, nobody knew Fink. This is like late 91. So this is like a beta version. We would get the beta versions of the cabinets. And finish him. And uppercut. I don't go. You know what? I said to myself, this one day I got so mad. I said, I'm going to get so fucking good at this game. There ain't going to be one motherfucker that's going to play this game here no more. And I shit you not, I sat on that game from 8 in the morning till 2, 3 in the morning the next night, every night. So much that I brought my girlfriend, my fiance, down and made her play it with me, so I had people to play against me. She got good. Like, she used to go to the arcades and whoop Nitin and all their asses too.
He didn't tell us that.
And it's at that point when we're working on the game, is when the controversy starts with the blood and all that stuff. And I just got so good at this game. I told the marketing guys, I'm going to go out and attract people, i.e. go to Westbury Nathan's, go to the Broadway arcade. I'm going to do the shit they don't know exists. See, now the funny part about it is Midway didn't tell us anything. They didn't give us codes or any of that. I figured out 90% of the shit that I got. Not 90. I would say 60%.
Did you, is it fair to say, Since you were there and you were saying you were getting some kind of pressure from your bosses, the marketing people, is it because they knew of how controversial Mortal Kombat was at the time? Was the controversy there head on and they're like, listen, this game is garnering a lot of attention. It may not be all positive. I mean, again, we have politicians, politicking against this game. Was it because of that?
It's a combination. Okay, when Senator Lieberman, which is the politician that you're speaking about from Connecticut, went after the gore and the influence of video games and violence, which, as a guy, listen, I play the game. I also, and I tell this to people, me and CD Jr. had a big war about this. I agree with them. I agree that video games do desensitize and do promote violence. I'm not saying not to do it, but it's got to. That's where a rating system's supposed to come in. It's like me asking you, would you let your 8-year-old son watch a porno? It's natural. No, you wouldn't. You oversee what he does and make sure damn straight. You go, well, you can't go into a video store no more, but you would make sure he didn't go behind the curtain. And that's the same way I always felt with the game. So while that was kicking in, Nintendo, remember at that time, Nintendo was wholesome. So Nintendo turned around and they came up to us and they said, yeah, no blood.
Oh, was this
Sega,
the Nintendo don't?
Sega, on the other hand, let it rip. They didn't care about nothing. But then Nintendo kind of fucked us because not only did they say no blood, they said no decapitations.
No. Oh, no.
I said, what? What do you mean? No decapitations.
This is the selling point for this game. This is why people are playing it.
So the first thing I did is I was working with the artist, and I came up with Raiden's electricity where it fries you to dust. The second faith, now we're running out of time. Time is ticking because, September 13th is our release date, which means to release it on September 13th, you need to have your approval in early August or you can't mass produce these fucking carts and get them on the shelves. So basically in August, we got to have it done. So now we're in, and Nintendo didn't hit us with this until maybe end of June, July.
Wow.
So now we got 3 months and we got to take out Johnny Cage's head fatality, Sub-Zero's head and spine rip, and Raiden's. In 3 months, I got to come up with 3 fatalities. That's why the next one was Sub-Zero. And while we did the Raiden one, that killed a month. The Raiden one killed a month for us. Boom, done. So now I got 2 months left, and I got to come up with 2 new fatalities. So I said, for Sub-Zero, let's have them use, because, one of the things a lot of people, it's reused animations was his fatality. Right. He froze you, and then he walked in, and he gave you basically the high punch in close, which was just like a backhand. And what was supposed to happen is it was supposed to turn purple. Like red and blue mixed turns purple. So, but they were like, no, that's blood. So they were like, nope, nothing. So we had to take that out. Now we got to take that out. Now I'm in I would say mid to end July, and we're on Johnny Cage. And the original Johnny Cage fatality, I thought was cool as shit. He loads up the shadow kick. He hits you in the chest and knocks all your shit out the back.
Right.
You got to take that shit out, huh? Or you can't have him knock the stuff out. So now he just fucking hits you in the stomach. You go, and you fall. I forgot about that. Now what's funny is, so check this out. I'm going to show you a little piece of history.
We like history on this show.
See, I'm like Felix the cat. I got a little bag of tricks here.
What's in the green bag? What was that?
This is Mortal Kombat with all the blood for Super Nintendo.
Wow.
What had happened was after we had finished, see, I got my bag of tricks is I got ROMs of all this stuff, all development ROMs, Genesis. I got
That's
everything.
pretty cool stuff, man.
Sega CD.
How many copies of those things exist in the world?
What's that?
How many copies of those exist, or are those the only ones?
I verified that this one that I have is the only one.
Oh, wow.
So what had happened was this. So after we got Mortal Kombat out, so as we get to the end, like we're like, okay, we're good. We gave them what they wanted, so we submitted, and we're ready to bang it out, and we're all doing, yeah, Mortal Kombat, MK30, Mortal Monday's happening. Nintendo comes back to us that night, and they go, yeah, everything's okay, but one thing. We need you to take out Kano's heart rip. What? That's not a decapitation. Yeah, but, we just felt, well, we're not going to make Mortal Monday. Well, you got to do something. That's why there's nothing in his hand. He does it and pulls out nothing.
Is Midway saying anything, or are they basically just in the background?
No, they're absolutely. Ed Boon, I had many conversations with Boon over the years. He's very adamant. He's very protective of his franchise. I had before MK, I did Super High Impact, which was one of his games, and he called me up one day and he goes, Jimmy, I know you're their go-to guy, yada yada yada. I need you to make sure this game gets done right. Super High Impact didn't play as good as as we wanted. What was the other game that Arch Rivals didn't come out as great as we wanted. But you got to make sure. And I said, all right. So he was always on top of it. The biggest problem was, and this happened also with Uncanny X-Men. You remember Uncanny X-Men for NES?
Yes.
And remember how you got to the final boss? You had to hit select start.
Yeah, select start and geez, what the heck was it? It was some weird button combination.
And you collected the discs. There was a bug in it in the version that we mass produced. It was supposed to highlight text in the messages on the disc, and it didn't. So we actually had to write the code in the manual so you could finish it. Because basically, if you deciphered it, it told you to take out the cartridge and look for the code on the cartridge. Well, on an NES game, if you take the cartridge out, it's game over, dude.
Yes.
You can't take it out and continue.
Did you guys make your Mortal Monday deadline?
Yes, we made the Mortal Monday deadline, but the problem was this. Like that, one thing you'll notice with MK for a Super Nintendo is it plays sticky. Like the controls react like shit.
Yeah, they do.
You hit up to jump towards somebody. You hit up 1, 2, he jumps.
Yes.
That was a bug. That while we were trying to, bum rush to get all this done, the version I have here plays just like the arcade. Now, the version I have here is not Mortal Kombat 1 either.
So, what is it?
It's called Mortal Kombat Nitro. What it was after Mortal Kombat had come out, I was pissed. Because obviously I knew the shortcomings of the game. And at that time, Street Fighter was coming out with Street Fighter 2 Turbo. So I presented to my boss. I said, listen, let's make a game like a sequel to Mortal Kombat. Call it Mortal Kombat Nitro, i.e. Turbo. Nitro's faster than Turbo. Mm-hmm. Let's give them the ability to play as the bosses. And I came up with a treatment for the whole game. New art designs, in fact, hold on.
More history, guys.
Crack open my...
This is why we have them here.
Mortal Kombat Secret.
This is why we have them here, man. This is top level secrets, but it's also great history.
Here you go. Confidential confidential moves for Mortal Kombat 1993. All right, so in a nutshell, I came up with this treatment back in '93, which is, and I actually made Ed Boon and Tobias sign it. That's Mortal Kombat Nitro.
Wow.
In it, different designs for characters. You know, if you play MK11, they made them look like that already.
Mm-hmm.
You got little Sonya action. New design for Raiden.
Did you draw those?
How old are these?
No, I said, did you draw them?
No, I had an artist do it. I'm not that good of an artist. A little fucking. That's what Scorpion was supposed to be.
I thought it was going to be Ermac.
Nah, Ermac was hidden character in it though.
Nice.
Goro. And Liu Kang. Liu Kang action. So basically, a quick rundown of it was what I was putting in it. It was I was fixing all the bullshit that went wrong. I was giving players instant replay, adjustable speed, dual fighting trees. What dual fighting trees were was when you played Mortal Kombat, you hit start, you work your way up the ladder. Right. Kill people, get to the boss, you die. I said no. What I would rather do is you go up the ladder. So say you pick Kano. Kano isn't bad. Kano has a choice to become good and bad. Depending on who he performs fatalities, will put him off in a different direction for his ending. So if he kills Sonya, who's declared his rival, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if he goes and he kills, Raiden, now he's going on to the dark side. And as you go up the ladder, your levels will change. You know you're going bad because the sky gets dark as you keep working your way. If you get to the boss and it's completely dark out, Shang Tsung had all his morphs. Everybody had new fatalities. And it was, from this point on, I was buried in this, in Mortal Kombat. And I didn't pick my James MK. What had happened was one of the programmers, when he did the credits for Mortal Kombat 1, put me down as Jim MK Fink. And then I went on IRC and I picked the name and it was James MK. And of course, back then, I told people, hey, yeah, I work with Acclaim. I'm doing the home version, but I can't tell you any of the fatalities. That's because I was actually signed to a non-disclosure, And people got mad. So what did they do? They took the name James MK with one S and turned it into a bot, put it in a room, and I couldn't get my name back. That's why I added the second S. I tell everybody it's two S's because I'm super stud, but the fact of the matter is, it was because somebody fucking took my name, turned it into a bot, and I had to put a second S. That's the truth.
You mentioned, you told your bosses, you have the MK machine there. You get good at it just to get these people away from your freaking cubicles, like leave me alone. And you mentioned that you decided, you know what? I'll take a little bit of a lead, and I'm going to go get some people for you, get the name out there. And you mentioned, what is the Westbury Nathans? And yes. That's where you met. I'm assuming that's where you met Nit and everybody else who you...
Everybody, yes.
Yeah, this is where you met everybody, and you have a whole bunch of new competition for Mortal Kombat. Were they very inviting to you at the beginning? Did they know you were a tester? Take us through that, how your interactions with Nit and the crew.
All right, so the marketing guys at Acclaim pulled me on the side, and it started out with them saying, hey, let's see what you can do. Here I am, 20, 21 years old. I'm like, all right, let's go. And I go to the fucking, they drive me. We were only about a half hour from Westbury Nathans. And they said, play some people. They thought, he's good with us in the office. Let's see what he could do. I blew the fucking backs out of everybody. So bad. I can't. Again, I was playing people one-handed, being a dickbag, because and the crowd built. So for me, it was a rush. I'm like, oh shit, this like 50 people, like 50 people. That's more than a goddamn tournament for an MK9 event right now. 50 people just standing behind me to watch me play, and they weren't. It became somebody beat this dickhead. That's what the crowd was. Somebody beat him.
Let me
And
let me
there
ask you a
was
question.
days.
Let me ask you a question before you go on to that. Keep going with the story. We already mentioned back in the 70s, early 80s, it was about beating the high score. So
Yeah.
in games like Centipede, there was somebody there waiting. Some others, they were just one-player games. You got fighting games now, and you have to have somebody right there next to you.
Yeah.
Anybody who's been in a fight in an arcade knows there might be a little bit of pushing here and there because there wasn't that much space. What are the different dynamics knowing that if you do something there, and I'm sure you know how to take care of yourself even back then. You said you blew all their backs out, but what were their reactions? Were some of them really angry? It's like this motherfucker, because
I definitely got. I don't know. You know what? It's weird because I'm a cupcake, but people apparently think that I'm like fucking John Gotti or some shit. So I never really had to experience that, where I would hear, well, are you fucking, as they're walking away, that fucking dick, and that don't bother me. It's when you're in my face, but I never had to punch somebody over a video game or a confrontation. That myth that people like to blow up about how violent the arcades were. Yeah, there was violence there. Usually it trickled outside. But it was usually not because of the actual. It started as the game as an excuse to start with a group of people. But I never really got that, somebody in my face, or I'll kick your ass, yada, 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 or nothing like that. No, I never really experienced it. For me, it was the adrenaline rush was at this time you were still allowed to smoke in the arcade. So when I came in, the guys who did the change put my ashtray by this machine because they hated me burning the top of the fucking by the start buttons. So they put a fucking ashtray there. They put a chair for me, and I would sit there nonstop. And at that time, Nitin was one of them in the back crowd, but he never played yet. Like he hadn't come up and played until later on into the scene, but he always came. I don't know what he was playing back then, but he never played it until I guess maybe 4 or 5 months in of it being there. Then he started to play. In fact, a lot of them started to get like there was a group of Italians, a group of off the boat Italian guys. One of our friends, one of our friends hung out with them, and they played, and they were victims, all of them. And then they would go, "Hey, what's wrong with this guy? Why somebody beat him?" And then the guy who wound up becoming our friend did a, "Hey, I got you," and I blew his back out worse than all of them. But I felt bad, but I felt good. I was like, "Well, like Johnny Hustler, he tried. Let me take you under my wing and teach you what you're doing wrong." So I started to teach him. I started to get compassionate then, but I already got labeled a dickbag. But I would be like, you know what? Because at Mortal Kombat was a 50-cent machine.
Right.
So watching people dump money so fast, I started to say, you know what? Let me make it go 3 rounds all the time. Now, if you were cool, I would sell the second round. Hey, why don't you try this? And and if you did all right, oh yeah, give it a shot. Oh, you got me on that one. Good job, man. Next round, flawless.
Was this
if you were a dickbag, I would still give you the round. But I would do this. Yeah, take the round. Go ahead, do it. Practice. What you got to do? That way he knew.
Was that your first experience with Mortal Kombat in that actual arcade? You did say you had the machine plopped down right next to you. When you went to the Westbury Nathan's, was that your first experience actually playing gamers? People who actually knew what the hell they were doing?
At that time, they didn't. That was another reason that put me so far ahead. At that time, they didn't. Again, Nitin said it best. We were beeper bound. We were going through BBSs and bouncing to news groups, and that was the only way of any type of communication between anybody, as far as moves or communicating anything somebody might have found. So, I mean, people kind of went into it naked. Like Nitin said, a lot of people jump, kick, fall down, and they're like, I got you. And they didn't know what a combo was.
No.
So, I mean, it didn't really start taking effect, because when I originally went there, I didn't go nuts. I played, casual, do a fatality, go, oh my God, what did I do? I don't know, and walk away.
Were you marketed, or did the people from Acclaim, did they specifically tell the arcade, hey, we have a guy from our office who's,
No.
No, oh, so it was all undercover.
No, this was just Acclaim. This was just Acclaim saying, let's spread the word.
Oh, okay then. All right then. So you went over there to spread the word for the Mortal Kombat console version, or
Yeah.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah.
So, well, how did you approach that with people who are so used to just playing in a console? I mean, how the heck did you approach them? He's like, hey guys, did you just tell them, hey guys, just to let you know, Mortal Kombat SNES is going to come out later?
After the night over, hey guys, first thing ever, how'd you do that fatality?
Of course.
I can't tell you. And that was where it built a lot of tension with people because they don't understand. It's twofold. I agree with them, but at the same time, in the business world, that non-disclosure agreement you sign is there for a reason. Let's just say we were working on Mortal Kombat and nobody knew about it, and Capcom decided to make Combat Mortal, and it's the same game because they heard about it. So that's where they like to keep a lot of stuff under their belt, and that specifically in the arcade, because the arcade is about, listen, $10,000 to buy a Mortal Kombat machine. That's a lot of quarters. That's why a lot of arcade operators jump the coins up to 50 cents.
Right.
I want to make sure I got to make 10 grand and 50 cents so I have 50 cent profit.
And by all means, those machines, they were their revenue. It's like they were
livelihood.
Yeah, they were specifically programmed to steal your money. You told me that one time. It's like you said, these machines cost $10,000 for Mortal Kombat 2. I could only imagine what Cruising USA with all its accessories and the chair.
20, 30 G's.
Exactly. And meantime, it's like, well, this is why even in Times Square, some people were willing to pay $1 to play Marvel 2 or Mortal Kombat 2.
On a side note, that's people were always bitching about when Tekken 7 was going to drop for the home system. But in Japan, they sold arcade cabinets.
Yes, they did.
That's why they couldn't bum rush and just put the cabinet out, because the arcade owner that just spent $22,000 on it is going, hey, if you put it out at home, they're not going to come here.
Exactly.
I need to make my money.
And even though we want to say, oh my God, the Japanese arcade culture is so much better, if those guys had access to it in the console, they wouldn't step inside the arcade.
No reason.
So you working on Mortal Kombat 1, you already detailed some of the problems. And actually, before we go on to Mortal Kombat 2, what ended up happening with Mortal Kombat Nitro? You said you pitched this idea. Was it just shut down?
It's funny because what had happened was we pitched it to Midway, and the minute Ed Boon finished Mortal Kombat 1 Revision 3.0 ROMs, right on to Mortal Kombat 2, the arcade game. They made that game in a year with 6 people.
Wow.
A year.
That's impressive.
That was the turnover. That's like, to me, I'm like, and at that time, it's him coding, John doing the art, Dan Forden doing the sound, and 3 other guys. Boom, that's it. And they did it in a year, which is a remarkable feat. But Midway had come back to us, and basically we were working on it. Like I said, I got the only ROMs left in existence, and they denied it. They said, we don't want it to come out at the same time as Mortal Kombat 2. We don't want to interfere. my attitude was, well, wait, Mortal Kombat 1 Nitro is going to be for the home. They're still going to come to play too, and they said no, so it got scrapped.
Wow. How did you feel about that when they came and told you it's like, no, we're not
I
gonna?
was fucking pissed as a motherfucker. I mean, I put fucking months and months into it, and to have it scrapped like that, you're like, dude, I did all this for nothing. I did it so I can have a folder here and a working ROM half complete.
Jesus Christ. I guess that's the fun of working in the gaming industry. Mortal Kombat 2 comes out. Obviously, we know controversy is much bigger. You're working at Acclaim. Take us to when Mortal Kombat 2 came out, the arcade. We all know how big it was. How long after Mortal Kombat 2, the arcade version came out, did they come up to your company and say, "We need you guys to port over Mortal Kombat 2"?
They don't do that.
Oh, they don't.
Like I said, no. We had to deal with them. We had a contract with them. We had a contract with them in the WWE.
Okay.
WWF.
Yes, at the time, yes.
We are the only. If Midway puts out a game, we get first dibs, plain and simple. So
Nice.
if they say, well, no, we don't like the way you did MK1, suck our nuts. We want it. You got to give it to us. That's part of the contract. So when they had, right before the game released, I guess maybe like 2 or 3 weeks before it released, we got one of the cabinets at the office. I'm not going to lie. I was first not impressed with it. They dropped the high 8 fucking graphics and went to this, textured, looking kind of cartoonier, and it didn't vibe with me at first.
It's a more colorful game. A lot of people don't realize because I loved Mortal Kombat 2, but yeah, it is a much more colorful game compared to 1.
Well, they shot that on a high 8 cam. Now with the success of MK1, they're like, hey, oh shit, no. He needs better cameras and better equipment. Let's get him better stuff this time. So it's, technologically it's more advanced. It's digitized and then they painted over them. Mm-hmm. That's why you got the glowy look on like Johnny Cage's chest, and they had that ability more. But again, they didn't share nothing with me. So it was, here I am back to square one again. Now it's Mortal Kombat 2 trying to figure out shit. And at this point, I'm not even trying to play the game. I'm just trying to figure out fatalities. Which is annoying because it ain't like MK3, no one punch kill. You got to, by myself, and the art of finding fatalities is a very, very important honed skill. A book with every combination and every button press checked off from short, medium, sweet, full screen. Because you got to remember, in MK2, you had 4 distances. Full screen, outside sweep range like Scorpion and who else has outside sweep range?
I believe Reptile does.
Reptile. 2 steps off and right next to. Mm-hmm. Right next to, block, high kick, katana cuts the head off. 2 steps back, forward, low kick, Kung Lao slice. So I had to go through all of those combinations on my own to find everything that I found. And all of those I found. That was like the first thing I found, all of them. And I found the fucking friendship, which the first friendship I found was Johnny Cage fucking around. I didn't know, I was going to get it. I was just like, doing this after I beat a guy. And all of a sudden, he's like, I'm like, what the fuck is that?
It's funny.
I just gave you an autograph.
It's funny you bring that up because from the Knitting episode, basically they paid, their way to trying to find all this stuff. Meanwhile, you have the machine next to you and you're just doing it by yourself. Much different world.
His story is a little tainted. Because, listen, by the time MK2 came out, Westbury Nathans loved us. They would give us the key, and we'd service credit all day. So his whole "we always paid," was a little fabricated. No, it's the guy that the operator of the night, but he would open it up and just throw it on free play for us all night.
Did you stay in contact with those guys between the time when you you know, first started showing up there and you know, into the Mortal Kombat 2 days?
Hmm?
Did you like how much did you stay in contact with that crew from the Westbury Nathans from the time you first stepped in there for Acclaim playing Mortal Kombat 1 and basically, you know, until Mortal Kombat 2
I
came out?
mean,
Or
up until like I said, I mean, for the most part, me, Nitten, and two other guys have pretty much stayed in contact fairly regularly. Uh, I talked to two of the guys. The guy, one of the Guineas, I mean, one of the Italians that hung out there, and one of the guys that worked at Nathan's. I took them on, taught them how to test, and got them jobs working on MK2.
wow.
So I talk to them once in a while, not too often. You know, they're out of the industry too, and one's a politician. But you know, I mean, for the most part, you know, the guys at Westbury and Athens, that's really it. Just the three guys that left. You know, we kind of lost track. I mean, we reunite, like we reunited with this kid we call Mike the plumber because he's a plumber. That's his gamer tag. Um, uh, but you know, we reunited with him. And Nitten tends to stay in touch. Nitten's more of this fucking. Nitten's like the guy that you got to worry about when he was a kid. That you actually have to tell him, don't talk to strangers. They're bad people. He's like, hey, hi, oh shit, I remember you. Hey, hi, oh. He's just like this welcoming dude, and it's like you can't welcome everybody, dude. You know, but for the most part, like three guys, Nitten being one of them, and you know, we still all stay in contact.
Back then, were you having more fun playing MK2, MK1 with those guys than you were in the office?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The people see one of the things about the gaming industry is, and it's still this to today, uh, it's taken for granted. A lot of people that get in the gaming industry are Joe Rocker, who, you know, is trying to become a rock and roll band, and he's a stoner, and you know, he's like, dude, I'm gonna get paid to play video games, and then one day we're gonna be a big band, and then I'm gonna leave it all behind. And he's taking a spot for somebody that really has a passion for the industry. But he knew the cousin of the sister, like me, of somebody that could hook him up with a job. So, you know, it was always better. I mean, I stay in contact with the core people from my job as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the guys' wife does my hair. The other guy that did the artwork, you know, I still talk to him a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with this one. He does a charity thing on Long Island out in Franklin Square. It's called the Franklin Square House of Horrors. It's like for Halloween. It does the whole block up. And
I've heard of that. I have heard of that. I haven't really experienced it, but I have heard
yeah,
of it. Yes.
he does that. So, you know, I go down there, try to help him sometimes. But you know, beyond that, you know, I'm part of an Acclaim group on Facebook where, you know, all of us old school people, you know, we'll get back together and say, hey, how are you and stuff. But I always liked Nitten and these guys because it wasn't just work; it was hanging out, you know, and it was kind of my not rewind, my
Reintroduction to the game.
no. When I like a rewind, like like when you go to a bar to
Yeah.
like fucking relax or something, like going and hanging out with them. I didn't have the pressures of work, you know. You know, and people don't understand that, you know, playing games and making games are two different things.
Yes, that's something a lot of people don't understand.
A lot of people, you know, oh my God, I'll be the best. Yeah, but you know, your job is not, you know, when you're testing games, your job is not to beat 100 people. Your job is to take Super Mario and bang his head into the flagpole 60 times to see if it crashes. You know, it's a lot of monotony to shit to try and figure out why bad things are happening in the game, causing it to crash. It's not an easy task. It's definitely not an easy task. You know, and I mean, I've had guys that I worked with, you know, that was so stoned half the time The whole time they came up with not one bug. And you go, oh, are you playing? Oh, yeah, I play. I got through it 32 times already. Okay, but nobody would ever play the fucking game 32 times in a row, you idiot. You got to do the things that you think people would actually do. Most games back then don't have a replay value. It's a one and done. I finished it. Okay, put it in the corner with the rest of the dusty games.
Right.
But it was definitely the people that I hung out with that I got more pleasure from.
When did you when did you start getting dissatisfaction from being inside the video game industry? I mean, you said it yourself. You worked in almost over 500 games, ports to all sorts of consoles. When did you decide, you know what, I'm just not having any fun. I'd rather just go out and hang out at the arcades with Nate and the fellas.
It didn't happen like that. The way it happened for me was kind of fucked up, little controversy. So again, like I said, jealousy built, whether it's because I was a dickhead or if I was good or I didn't share a fatality. Like I said, I'd become very high utilized in Acclaim. And my opinion carried a lot of weight. And I made that mistake of superseding my boss on something, which set him off on a tangent. And he basically tells me one day that people were calling him up, leaving a voicemail that I was selling secrets to magazines. And I wasn't at the time at all. And I said, no, that's not true. And then he says, all right, don't worry about it. And then, 3 weeks later, he gets a call again. This time he lets me listen to it. This time he lets me listen to it. And it's somebody, but I'm pretty good with it. Sounds like somebody I know. And I'm like, yo, I don't know who that is. But in my head, I'm going, I think I do know who that is. And he says, all right, well, if this happens again, I'm going to fire you. What? And then he turns around and a couple of days go by. And I was receiving a new set of ROMs from one of the overseas developers for Quarterback Club Challenge. And he said I received the ROMs and I put it in the outbox and I was trying to send it to a BBS to bootleg it. And I go, what the fuck are you even talking about? And the guy that tells me this says, oh, don't worry about it. Go home. Don't, it'll be fine. I'll call up our boss, talk to him. That day I went home, 5 o'clock. He calls me up. He says, come in before 8 o'clock in the morning, get your shit out of the desk, you're fired.
Wow.
And that was it. It was a wrap. My gaming career taken away from me. Now, the irony to it is the guy that fired me, I wanted to kill him. And years later, he calls me up and he goes, I got to be honest with you. I never told you this because I was scared. He goes, you're the first person in my life I ever fired. He came from Nintendo, actually. He goes, I never fired anybody before, and it wasn't my idea to fire you. It was this guy, Paul. And I'm going, really? And he goes, yeah. He says, wow, because Paul told me, because I had seen Paul, which is funny because Paul's in New York, and I used to work on Greenwich Street. He lived across the street from the Citigroup building that I was at. And he would, oh, yeah, Steve, yeah, he fired you. I didn't know. This guy tells me, no, he called me up and told me to fire you. He was pissed at you because you overstepped your boundaries and went to the CEO with something instead of him. So I got screwed. And it made me pissed. So, the video game industry is an odd industry because, they don't pay hourly. They pay salary. They'll give you $25,000. They were bringing kids in, 18-year-old kids in by this time, paying them $25,000, $30,000 and keeping them working like 90 hours a week.
Right.
So I went to the Department of Labor. One of my friends was still working there. I said, give me all the timesheets. Gave me 7 years of timesheets. I went to the Department of Labor. They said, yeah, this is illegal. I said, well, you keep my name out of it. I don't want to get involved. And then I wound up running into the guy, Paul, one day at a gas station, and I asked him what happened. You know, he goes, "Oh yeah, Steve did that." He said, "But I want you to come back," and he brought me back. So I went back to work at Acclaim, and I was like, "Woohoo! My dream's alive again." Well, the guy Steve that quit, the guy that filled his shoes was one of these dick bags. I heard about you. I know all about you. You know, that typical drill sergeant. I'll be watching you. And I like, okay, I'm fine with that. 2 days later, the IRS and the Department of Labor seized fucking Acclaim's timesheet for 10 years. And somehow they told him that I was the one that gave it to them. So he came to me and he's like, "Yeah, Jimmy, I got good news and bad news. Good news is, yeah, you work here. Bad news is, not no more." I go, whoa, what did I do? He goes, "You know what you did." I go, "What?" He goes, "The CEO is fucking livid. They're being audited." And that was it. Career was over. So it wasn't a glorious end to the gaming career. It wasn't something I wanted. But, you know, I've always been, you push, I push back. So I push back.
Was this well, I mean, after all of that, what is it that you do? I mean, do you sit down and think, well, what the fuck am I gonna do next? You know, or did you go? You know, was it just another day for you? Or like you say, hey, my dream, my passion is gone. I got fired second time. What is it that James MK? What is it that James MK does? You know,
what does James MK do? James MK becomes spiteful. James MK becomes very spiteful. So the first thing James MK does, as a spiteful son of a bitch, is he goes out and he writes a Mortal Kombat 2 book. Because I'm not under a non-disclosure no more. And in it, I insult my boss. I told everybody in the book about him having an affair with his fucking secretary. In my special thanks section, I jab at people. In fact, I think on this one, I think I even put Nitten in here. Yeah, I got Nitten in here. Yeah. And then I go and I do an MK3 guide. I go back and I do an MK1 guide. I do a Primal Rage guide. I do an guide.
Jesus Christ, guys. Oh my God.
I love guys. You know, me and Brady argue that. And then I do a Mace guide.
Mace the Dark Age, another fun little game for the N64. Jesus.
An MK4 guide. A Sub-Zero mythology guide.
You know, I like that game. I like mythology. Sub-Zero.
I like mythology. A Sega authorization of a bunch of compilation games. Yeah, I think that's about it. So that's what I do after leaving the game industry. But I stayed in contact with people like Ed Boon, and you know, I still played MK at that point,
right?
A lot.
You know, Nitten told us that by all means, you and him were some of the original people, maybe the original, players that decided, you know what, we do play at arcades. We hang out with all our friends. We're all competitive. Let's see if we could organize some sort of tournament for bragging rights, because that's the one thing everybody who's talked about arcades in this podcast, it's not about winning money. It's all about bragging rights.
It's always been for me bragging rights.
Could you confirm that story for us, and how did you guys go about it?
All right, so we wound up trying to host, like any other typical arcade. Let's put up a couple of signs and maybe people will come. And then we notice it's only us 8 guys that are always there playing against us. Why are we putting a fucking sign up? Nobody cares. So then we start sending out to other arcades on the island. We put something in the mall here, in Sunrise Mall, Broadway Mall, Westbury Nathan's. We put it in fucking 110 Nathan's, which is where little L.I. Joe was at the time. And again, nobody shows up. Everybody's basically saying, well, what do I got to come to your arcade for? Basically was the attitude. And then we found IRC. And, we all went to Pound MK. And that's where, i.e., like I was saying earlier about losing James MK's name, they turned it into a bot. And the wars didn't start over the game. It started over control of the channel. Because whoever had a bot in the channel is the boss. And I can make who I want the operators.
Right.
If you're not an operator, I kick you the fuck out. I'll lock the room up. I'll set it up with a passcode. So, we would go back and forth, and there was a player by the name of Scott McCarran. He ran a website, TRMK, which was one of the first websites as well. And he was that kid that would come into the arcade, probably didn't play the game much, but he sold the FAQs that he printed up.
Right.
So, there was one of his friends went by the name of Drew Boy. So Drew Boy was in Bloomfield, New Jersey, and he worked in the arcade there. And he talked all this smack, how, we're going to blow you up, you nothing. We're coming. That's what we said. We're coming. And we were all packed in my car. I think I had a beat up fucking Dodge Dart, some real shitty ass car, like a 1970 Dodge Dart. And, I'm journeying across the George Washington Bridge going, dear God, please let my car make it there. We go to the arcade and we destroy them. With all the shit that they talked, it was almost as if, did you ever turn the game on, or is this the first time you actually turned it on? That's how bad we were blowing them up. We were doing anti-air punches, and they're like, what is that? So after that, then we went to the Willowbrook Mall, which was another one, that's where, again, like I said, we, unlike gamer tags, I think we pioneered that too, because, gamer tags, people pick them now. Back then, you were assigned your gamer tag. We gave you your nickname. So we had a guy, we called him Al the Mongoloid, just because he fucking acted like a fucking Mongoloid. And then we had a ginger dude called Red. And Brian LeBaron at NRS used to come down with a fucking mohawk and pants that the circumference of the pants, you couldn't see. It made a dress look small. Like the pants went out like 3 feet across, and he was a little guy, so he was stuck in the middle of it.
Was he a punker?
He was like a punker, yes. So we blew them up over there. So now we blow them up, and they follow us back to Westbury Nathan's. Now, you're up in the Bronx, right?
No, Yonkers. I might as well be in the Bronx,
okay.
So yeah.
You know where Goshen is?
Yes, I do.
He's from Goshen.
And he went out all the way to Long Island.
All the way to Long Island. And the next day, we pull up, and I'll never forget it. He drove a little red CRX with the little hatch in the back.
Yeah.
And it was filled. It was filled from top to bottom with empty bottles of Mountain Dew. At first, we're like, is that a homeless car or something? And then open it up, and there's him fucking sleeping in it. He's like, I've been waiting for you guys. And he waited all day just to play her. And I loved that about him. I was like, wow, I respect that. And they came down, and they became part of our crew. Even though they were far away, we started to play like Johnny Appleseed, and we're planting seeds of competitiveness. Because now when he goes back to Goshen, he's playing, well, I represent these guys. Al was in New Jersey. He's representing us here. And it just spread. And then, from there, we would get better numbers, still, 10, 15 guys. It was still better than what we had. It wasn't just 8 of us. It was 8 plus 8. But it was all through IRC that allowed us to start doing that, because it was finally a means to communicate with other players.
Let me ask you
You know,
this.
so
Let me ask you this, because again, we've seen the Nitten episode. Yes, we're referencing that episode a lot, because again, guys, might as well be a companion episode. Why was it that in Long Island, Long Island has a big Mortal Kombat community back then? New Jersey had a big Mortal Kombat community. From what you saw, why was it that New York City didn't have itself much of a MK community? At least, where I've talked to people where, oh yeah, we know what Mortal Kombat is. I mean, who wouldn't know what it is all over the TV? But like a dedicated arcade with at least 5 or 8 people who just go back and forth. Like, why was that? From your
the
recollection, why was
only
it that New York City did not have a core Mortal Kombat
New
group?
York City, Penn Station had a slight decent following in their arcade until that closed down. And then in Broadway arcade, it's Broadway that was not really, because Broadway was more focused on pinball anyway.
Yeah, you're right.
Playland, the only one in Playland, and I don't know, you might even know him. He was actually Triforce's mentor and Dominion's mentor. He used to go by the name in Street Fighter as Dal Sim.
Hmm. You know what? I've
Young
heard of
black
him.
guy.
He played up in Right Playland because Right Playland had a nice little decent arcade. I heard of him. I never played him, but I have heard of him.
He was a crazy motherfucker. He used to dress up as Kung Lao and meet us at Playland every fucking night. That was like the only New York, dead ass, had the whole Mortal Kombat 2, the hat, everything, and would walk around like it. And I was like, yo, this is a cool motherfucker. He beat me. Yeah, I'm heading over there. All right, I'll meet you.
Is he the earliest cosplayer you ever heard of?
Very well might be. Very well might be. But I think because, first of all, nothing against Mr. Lee, but Chinatown Fair sucked. Not because of the players. They never fixed shit. You go in there and shit was always broken. Every time I've ever gone in there. And you got to remember, Street Fighter was still the flavor.
Yes.
So Mortal Kombat never really people never really grabbed. And when Mortal Kombat 2 was out, people were still doing guile handcuffs in arcades, in the city, to piss people off, or doing the fucking yoga, shut the machine off.
Right.
So that, I think that evolved and just stuck. Street Fighter really was embedded into New York City. So MK came in, and the same stigma that goes with MK everywhere else, it was kind of revolving around those arcades too. You would get a couple of people that played, but nothing like no 50 people deep crowds. You did get crowds though. The Street Fighter players did delve over there. Not a lot. A lot of them were like, oh, that fucking stupid block button. That was most people's gripe, is the block button.
Right.
And they didn't understand the combo system. But Long Island, I think, again, and again, not to sound kind of like a dickbag and cocky, I think playing Johnny Appleseed, Westbury Nathan's wasn't the only place I went. I'd go into Hempstead at 2 a.m. into a bodega that I knew had it and play.
Right.
And I ain't gonna lie, there's been 1 or 2 times where shit got heated and I had to dump a fatality in somebody's lap to walk out alive. But hey, you play Reptile. Go to the biggest guy. You play Reptile? Back down, low punch. That's fucking his head. Oh, really? There you go. Let him go. He's my friend. Okay. But I think it was Long Island, doing the touring around, put a lot more eyes on it.
Right.
Having somebody sit there and beat 50 guys in a row, made people go, what the fuck's wrong with this guy's freak? And it brought that mystique to it. Now, the Jersey thing is funny because I left New York and moved to Jersey. And I lived in Jersey for the mid half of the 90s. So when it started picking up there, I met a young Tom Brady in my arcade. Before he was Tom Brady. And that was during MK4 days. Shock was in between that. I used to I met Czech, back in Menlo Park back in the day. Never met Shock until, MK9. But, I did the 8 on the break by myself a couple of times. So, I mean, I bounced around and did a lot. But I think, it's just New York City liked Street Fighter.
Street Fighter country.
That was...
Yeah, kind of like in Westchester Smash Brothers country. They, the overwhelming majority of players. It's just a territory thing.
That's what it is.
So Mortal Kombat 2, it's done. Here comes Mortal Kombat 3. You yourself said it. You don't like it. I asked Nitin this, and he played it, and he basically said the problem was a lot of people who really love Mortal Kombat 2, they just didn't get the game. And
it's not that for me, what it was, and I told this to Boone, why are you stealing from Killer Instinct? Because that's what your dial combo is. It's basically KI. I said, I don't like it. I also told him the same thing. Don't do 3D and MK4. Don't try to compete with Tekken 3. You're your own entity. Why try to be, well, Tekken 3 is the best thing out right now, but it's different. You had a uniqueness to it. The main reason I didn't like MK3 and UMK3 was within the dial combos, they made no sense. For example, I could come at you, jump over your back with a jump punch, and then it tells me the next button I'm supposed to hit, like let's say Nightwolf, is low kick. That's physically impossible to do. When you're making video games, you don't need to be realistic, but you also need to kind of continue with some attributes of physics.
Right.
And if you think about martial arts, did you ever see a guy jump in the air, punch you in the head, and then immediately kick you in the ankle with a low kick? And skip all the frames of actually landing down? So you see the animation of him up here, and then all of a sudden it skips, pulling the arm back in, going into a position like this and landed. It goes this, and then he's going in. Like, it just didn't flow for me. Some characters did. I know Nitin says, we played Sector and he was stupid. Yeah, but at least his combos they looked like they fit him.
Mm-hmm.
But even like the jumping attacks I didn't like, the way they did it. And then I also was kind of going through some IRL shit at the time, which also started to pull me away.
Okay, then.
But it never, the mechanics of it. And Boone's always said he likes to add something new all the time. Well, this time he added something new that I didn't like. It doesn't mean I hated it. I'll still go and I'll play it, but I just didn't like it no more. I actually liked 4 a little bit better, which is ironic. But but that's also when Nitin summoning started to really get good for us. I know he went into his world when he made his Johnny Appleseed venture out to fucking Chicago and got his stool pushed in. And we all said to him, did you tell him you'll kick their ass? He's like, no, I became their friends. I'm like, what? You got your back blown out.
How would you have reacted if you had made that trip and played those guys?
Yeah, I would have still talked shit. I would have figured out a way. Well, your pizza sucks. Something. Our pizza's better. Something. I'd have something. Chicago, back then, Chicago Cubs ain't won since 1916. Fuck you, we're Yankees. Something. I would have gave him some kind of comeback. Nitin's like, I was at a death metal concert. You guys want to come?
He told you that he made that trip. Obviously, he did go over there for the music festival. It just so happened to be that the thing was like, an hour and a half away. His buddies drove him. Did anybody else, did you have any inkling to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I want to go over there and see what these guys are all about. Did you ever have an idea of heading out there? Or it was just like, what? It's just a video game.
I went out there during 1 and 2. 3, like I said, 3 turned me off. 1 and 2, I went out there. I did fine. Mm-hmm. I had better competition, but I did fine. Florida, Nah, Florida had shit. No, I traveled. I did, like I said, I did a lot of places, a lot of arcades that, somebody said, yeah, my arcade's the best. I go in, there's 3 people in the arcade. I'm like, I traveled all the way here for this.
Right.
Because, back then, plus I was a cheap fuck, so I would go out there without the intent of trying to get a room. Go out there, stay till 10 o'clock, try to catch a red eye back. Like, wow, I traveled. I just spent $600 for fucking 8 matches. It was pretty bad at times. So that definitely slowed the traveling down.
Nitin had told us, even though they hated MK3 and MK4, they still played it. It was arcades. That was home.
Mm-hmm.
That's what everybody knew. I'm going to ask you. You were there. You experienced arcades. When you saw arcades starting to finally come down, the home consoles caught up with the machines, the hardware, the software. What did you feel? Did you feel that something from your, something that you dedicated so much of in your life had been taken away? Did you feel? I mean, what did you feel?
The home aspect of it, that home turf aspect of it. But see, one of the things that, and Nitin is kind of deaf to this because he never really paid attention to it. And again, being that I was involved in the industry, I look at arcades differently. He needs, what he needed to really realize is we were the only ones in the arcade. This isn't the 7, by the time MKs and Street Fighters were out, what you see in these movies where, there's 65 people in front of Street Fighter, that was few and far between. That was in spurts. That's arcades got killed by the consoles catching up technologically. But the arcades were being slowly bled due to poor games. If you walked into an arcade even during MK2, you'd see 80 people in front of MK2. And then you see 65 other cabinets empty.
Right.
Those are powered on too. Those are using electricity too. Guys still paying rent. And only, you could only play so many. What are you going to do? Put 85 Mortal Kombat 2 machines in? People have tried that and failed. Too many, over expensive. Again, like I said, when you look at the prices of these things, they ain't cheap. So for a guy buys 7 Tekken 7 cabinets, that's probably around $200,000. I got to make $200,000 back and hope you don't put the fucking thing out on the home system beforehand.
Right,
Yeah. I spent $200, that's why they did that, because they knew we can't crush the arcade market for ourselves. But now the arcade market there is hurting now too, because again, I don't want to play Pikachu. Nobody really wants that. Now what's big is the entertainment aspect of it, the dancing ones and the playing the drums,
right.
The big. It's almost like the redemption machines. It's like going to a Chuck E. Cheese now. But yeah, it sucked. It definitely sucked watching it fall apart, because before it fell apart, before the arcade fell apart, people don't remember the bodegas lost theirs. See, the mom and pop operators that took their biggest losses. See, timeouts and all these franchise arcades, they lost it as gradually as they could. But, arcade operator went out and bought 50 guys because the distributor said this is the next best thing, and nobody played it. Now he's out to all that money. That's it. Shutting shop down. Our friend, we had a friend who had MK. He would put what games we wanted in the 24-hour place that we used to play. And eventually, I think it was Primal Rage killed him.
Wow.
The hardest. I think Primal Rage, he bought too many Primal Rages. And he wasn't making the money back, because, that one that's in the laundromat, there ain't no fucking little lady that's doing a laundry that says, hey, let me go play some Primal Rage. So eventually a lot of that killed him. But yeah, I definitely, a part of me died in the arcade basically because it does suck because it was, being young, but adults. I mean, again, we were able to drink and game, but yet, having that taken away kind of really sucked. And it got taken away. And I was telling him, Westbury Nathan's is now a Chick-fil-A.
Well, listen, arcades completely died, and there were only some dedicated places. Chinatown Fair, you told me what you think of Chinatown Fair. Um, I don't know about the Long Island area, but obviously we had Eight on the Break. Some survived, but obviously it just wasn't the same. Did you ever, after everything just regularly died, did you ever take the time to go visit those places? Maybe you and the crew decided to, or was it just, you know what, we're gonna stay home. The consoles, they picked up hardware wise. Well, what did you guys do after everything basically closed down?
Well, when everything started to close down, we all kind of went our own ways. Nitin got married. I was dating a girl, moved to Jersey, and ran an arcade actually.
Oh, you did? That's
I
awesome.
ran an arcade in East Brunswick. Funny story about it is so during MK4, because MK4 was basically the end era of arcades.
Yes.
After that, everything disappeared. So, in during my arcade, this young Tom Brady, fresh out of high school or in high school still, used to come into my arcade. He's playing me and I'm beating him. And, I said, hey, you want to learn something? He goes, what? I said, I'll teach you Jax's Fatality. And I show him that Jax's Fatality. And he said, cool. And I said, don't tell nobody. And he turns around and he plays this dude. And older guy, hey, kid, how'd you do that? Oh, I can't tell you. Nah, you got to tell me how'd you do that? Nah, I can't tell you. I promised the guy, who the fuck would tell you that? Don't tell. That's stupid. That guy over there and points to me. And the guy says to Brady, I should kick the shit out of you. I went over to the guy very casually, excuse me, started choking him, slammed his head against the arcade machine, and I said, the kid said he can't fucking tell you. But get the fuck out. And Tom Brady, that's why Tom Brady's white. He used to be a black man. He got so scared shitless, he turned white. And he goes, what the fuck? I said, sometimes you got to stand up to bullies. He's trying to bully you. And that was the last I seen Brady, too. Now, he came in a couple of times. He used to hate, I bought an Guys because I used to control the games I bought. I bought Guys in there. I converted, do you remember Time Traveler?
Of course.
It was the what is it? What do they call it? The hologram game?
Yes.
I converted that into a Guys.
Oh, nice, man. Well, listen. Now arcades are gone, like we already said, and now we're starting to do, or maybe they were before then. But do you have any recollections of your first offline FGC? Oh, excuse me, offline. Jesus Christ, your first FGC event where maybe it's held at a hotel or maybe whatever it is that they were using back then, like the ECC championships. Maybe Big E. Did you attend any of Big E's first tournaments?
My first tournament was ECT 3 or 4. So you'll get a kick out of this one. So in between all the life shit that happened, me and Nitin had a bump in the road, we'll say. And something had happened with me, and I was out of work, and I asked him to help me find work. And long story short, we became kind of enemies. And we hadn't talked for years. And, I had gotten married, and, my ex-wife was, what's this with all the video games? She would see all the video game stuff. I said, hold on, let me show you. So, I go to Google and put in James MK and try to see what I can look up, and I pull some stuff up. And then I'm reading, and I'm finding, like, my name coming up, but, like, in chats on pages, like, old school pages like Shocks and stuff like that. And Nitton talking shit. And I'm going, this motherfucker. And Tom Brady talking shit. And I'm going, this motherfucker. Now, I didn't know who Tom Brady was. He's like, in the article, in the write-up, he's like, yeah, he used to come. I used to go to his arcade. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know who the fuck he is. I don't remember, Tom Brady. So I call up. There was another one of the guys that were part of our crew. We called him Snapper Mike. He's actually going to start playing online too. He's good. You might have met him. He's come down to VSM, a couple tall, white, real paley stoner dude. Mm-hmm. So I tell
player, right?
I tell Snapper, I go, I'm going to go fuck up Nitton. What do you mean? I said, I'm going to find, because I come across ECT, Mortal Kombat 9 event. This is before VSM. So, I'm like, all right. So Snapper's like, okay, let's go. Let's go kick the shit out of him. And I'm like, all right, let's go. So we drive out to Jersey. We get out there. And now we're outside the hotel. And AC 1984?
Of course I do.
Okay. AC 1984 comes up to me. Hey, hello, how are you, my friend? I said, you know Nitton? He goes, oh, yeah, good friend of mine. I said, good. When you see him, tell him somebody's here to fuck him up. What? And he disappears. 10 minutes later, Arturo comes up to me. Hey man, you got a problem with somebody? I hear you okay? I go, who the fuck are you? hey, no problem, man. And he just scurries on away. So I'm sitting there, and I tell my friend Mike, this was the one that Joe and John are still running. So he turns around. I tell my friend, go get a beer and come back. And he goes to get a beer. And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at my phone, and I'm leaning. This was like, you remember the hotel they had the columns in the front?
Yeah, I do.
I'm leaning on the column, and I hear from the back of me on this side, what do you mean somebody's here and they want to kick the shit out of me? Who the hell would want to beat me up? And he turns the corner, he looks me in the face and goes, oh shit. He hangs up the phone. He's with his wife and his brother-in-law and his kids. And he's like, Jimmy, I know you want to fuck me up because I know I did some dicky things to you in the past. And it was fucked up. And I just look at him and he goes, Jimmy, I know you can kick the shit out of me. I'm in front of my kids. And his fucking big Polish fucking stepbrother comes up and I go, come on, keep coming. And he goes 2 steps back. And Nitton goes, Jimmy, I'm sorry. I said, what? He says, I'm sorry. I said, buy me a beer and all's forgiven. And we went inside and we go inside the bar and like we never had a fight. Oh my God, Jimmy, this is going to be great. I can't believe you're back in the scene. Holy shit, this is crazy. And he's talking to Matt and he's telling Matt, and Matt's like, I never even heard of this dude. And he's like, oh, Jimmy, I'm going to introduce you to everybody. And oh my God, you're going to meet this guy, Tom Brady. He's a top Sub-Zero guy. And I said, all right, cool. Well, let's see what we get going. And then remember how it was set up? You had the bar and then you had to go down the hall to go to the venue.
Right.
So me and him are starting to head towards the venue, and Bill comes walking up, and I don't know him. He goes, James M.K. Holy shit. I go, who the fuck are you? I'm Tom Brady. Nitton's like, you know Tom Brady? I'm like, I don't know who the fuck he is. You don't remember me? And he tells the story about the Mortal Kombat 4 arcade thing, choking the guy. He's like, you stop that guy from trying to beat me up. He's like, I wear this leather jacket and paying homage to you because you were always wearing a leather jacket. I was like, oh, God. And then from there, there was one other guy. There was a guy who went by the name of Red Saline. And I got to tell you a quick story about him, which is funny, too. So Red Saline was one of the guys that were anti-Jimmy back in the day. So he was at ECT. I didn't know. And then he was like, oh yeah, fucking, I would have kicked his ass and this and that. And I'm like, I don't know about that. He was a little guy, but he hits me up on TYM. Now I joined TYM. Oh yeah, you saw me and you didn't even say nothing. I go, I don't know who the fuck you are. I didn't know who Red Saline was at the time. So I go to the first VSM and Red Saline's there. And he sees me. I go, what now? I'm here. Let's talk. He left and never came back to VSM ever again. But see, our history, a quick summation of the history. So when I was working on the Mortal Kombat 4 book, I had gotten that book deal fast. And literally, I had a weekend to finish the book start to finish. So I flew out to Indiana, rented a car from Indiana, drove to Chicago to play with some of the testers, and wound up getting as much as I could, came back, and the first thing I did is I went to Westbury 8th. And Frank is there, and he's talking shit, and I'm like, I'm fucking tired. But I play him, and he beats me. And he says to me, I would have did the book, because obviously I'm better than you. And I fucking punched the side of the fucking cabinet and drove my knee through the front of the fucking, where the coin door is, and put my knee right through it. And said, that could have been you. And never saw him again until that VSM night. So after that, I don't know, man. After that, he disappeared. Me and Nitin started talking all the time. He introduced me to Shock. And then, it just from there, we all stay in contact. We try to do things together when we can. And we play the old school stuff. I still fuck around with the new school stuff, but I suck. I don't find it appealing. MKX was dog shit. Again, without good story, and like for MK11, it's too much shit. I don't need a crypt. I don't need to spend 16 fucking hours in a tower of time as a Baraka main to get a fucking nose ring for Katana as a prize. I don't fucking need a nose. You can't even see the fucking nose ring when it's in. But they're like, you get a titanium nose ring. You get to put a Prince Albert on your penis. I don't need that. That's where the game really started to lose me. See, Nitin dropped it at 4. And then 9, he tried it. 9, he tried. I think I lasted the longest with 9 out of all of us. Because Shock and him kind of gave up on it. And I stayed with this stupid. Sorry, all my Baraka fans, but I fucking never. I only picked them because VSM had no Baraka players. Yeah. So I was like, all right, I'll use the one guy. I'll use the leftover character. I mean, even if you look at Baraka, you're like, it's like picking a foot soldier in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The foot soldier. He's not King Baraka. They make him out to be. I mean, he's just the head of the retards.
You said it yourself. You really don't play the new games because you don't like them storyline wise. Some of the characters may annoy you.
I liked Aftermath. I liked.
Mm-hmm.
The add-on to MK11 Aftermath. That story mode was awesome.
I will be honest. I haven't even touched MK11. I played MKX and I just said, you know what, screw this, man. MKX
X
was
is
not
trash.
fun.
11. The original story that 11 did sucked. The continuation story, the DLC story, awesome.
We're here, and obviously we're doing a lot of your background, and you're an FGC personality. I'd be remiss not to ask you. This is not what this podcast is about, but I mean, what are your thoughts with everything going on within the FGC right now? Or a better question would be, how would you look at the FGC today compare it to when you first started going to offline FGC events, at least when you knew them by? If you just give us your opinion on that. Again, you're a big FGC personality. Everybody knows you, and you said it yourself. So you're not a controversial. You don't think you're a controversial guy. You don't like being you don't love the negativity like some people do. Before we end this interview, this podcast, what are your thoughts about the current FGC? What are your thoughts about the FGC in the last 5 years? That's a better question.
The FGC's always been toxic.
Yes.
Even us, we were toxic. Toxic by definition means basically, let's be real, the scene's filled with dickheads. You're either the dick or you're the dickhead. One of the two. And it's gotten worse now with the infusion of politics, with the highest I ever achieved as a player in what's considered the FGC, even back in like the MK1 days, with all the adoration that I got, there weren't fans, there weren't autographs, there weren't get-togethers. I mean, I did a couple of book signings in my day where like 5 people showed up. They flew me across country to like Indiana for 5 people. I'm like, all right, whatever, But with the evolution of technology and more events popping up, fans are actually starting to come out. And it's like the egos that, I try to warn people from getting, which I had, is worse, because it's like when you can't separate video games from the real world, that's a problem. If you think you're so big that you could go and touch a woman or a dude, whatever you're into, without permission because you're a name, you got a problem, and that's something, that my show is called out. I called out, a known photographer for stuff that was a co-host of my show at one time, and it killed me to do it. It killed me to do it. Because I felt like, he's a friend. He was a partner in the show for a while.
You felt betrayed? Betrayal?
What's that?
You felt betrayal?
No, I didn't feel betrayed. I felt, for me, my biggest thing about this show, I've called out Big E, I've called out Larry. A lot of the TOs are like, oh, well, he's biased to the East Coast. No, the whole point of this show is to call it out equal across the board. There's too much of this favoritism. There's stuff in this scene that's so bad, with assault sexually, physically, that go on that certain people cover up. And it's because of the names of those people. And I'm guilty of it in the sense I do a show, and if after I did the photographer stuff, I had a lot of women come up to me and tell me their stories. They said, I just wanted to tell you. Well, they told Melanie, or they told Chris from Corn. And then will tell us, but don't say nothing. And I don't, and neither do they. We keep those stories to ourselves because that person had enough trust to tell me it. And ask me, well, what should I do? And, I automatically say, you got to go to the cops. Well, I don't want to get the cops about it. I don't want to go to, and it makes me feel like shit because I have to, not that I have to. I wouldn't say I dug my grave, but I put myself in a position where people feel I might be a dick, but they know when real is real, that they can come to me and tell me what their stuff is, and it doesn't leave us. But it's like after a while, man, one person, 2 person, 3 person, 10 people telling me their stories and having me absorb this. And now I got to look at these people in the scene that perpetrated this stuff, and I can't just punch them in the face. But the person that's a victim tells me, hold on to it. Don't tell anybody nothing. And I'm going, then don't tell me. You can't. And That was something from back in the day to now that didn't exist. You know, both on a level of organization within the scene. You know, I wanted to do this show back in 1992. You know, I told Nitin I wanted to do this shit for decades before streaming was a service. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna go get a public access channel.
You know, it's funny. Before you go on, Nick did tell us that he told us, like, guys, you need to understand something about Jimmy. He's been wanting to do something like this since I've known him. I mean, not just starting in 2005. It's like literally it goes back to the 90s that you've always wanted to do something like this.
I wanted. Remember the show Starcade?
Yes.
You know, the art, the game. I wanted to do something like that. You know, I wanted to. I find myself, and it's ironic because I'm not a crazy fan of his, but I love his style. I love what Howard Stern does. You know, I like to keep the show real. At the same, you know, people will say, "Oh, it's Jerry Springer." Listen, it's whatever you want to perceive it to be. I could sit down, have heart to hearts. I can put shit on blast. You know, a lot of my complaining that I do, where people are like, "Oh, he's so negative." I'm negative because the scene is negative. They lie, you know, and I feel bad because people get mad at it, and I'm like, but then you perpetuate it. You know the scene is toxic. You know the scene is bad. But on the flip side, this scene is not like politics of today. You know, if you say you love Trump, you're a racist. If you say you love Biden, you're a pedophile. No, it's not that cut and dry. And in the FGC, it was supposed to be your escape from that bullshit. And the people that got put in power, whether because they're a good player, a good commentator, or a tournament organizer, they have a clique of people. Everybody's got their clique, you know, and in that clique, if you're in it, they'll cover for you. Oh, yeah, well, you know, girl comes and complains to you, or maybe you wanted it. What do you mean maybe I wanted it? I just told you he raped me. Now you're telling me, oh, no? Come on. You know, and a perfect example, I don't know if you follow Gutex at all. Gutex, they loved Gutex when he was doing his next adventure with Mike Ross.
Yes.
Now he comes out as a conservative, and everybody's like, oh, he's a crackpot. Like, how quick did you flip on somebody? You were, before you knew he was a conservative, he was cool. He was chic. He was Gutex from the future or whatever gamey thing he does. You know, but it's like the scene now, you know, and I just got done telling you my knee-jerk reaction of wanting to beat Summoning up for a flashback. But deep in my heart, I didn't want to. I just wanted to. I protected him in the arcade for so many years from getting beat up. That how ironic would it be for me to be the one that actually finally gets to beat him up? I don't think he's ever had a fight in his life. I'd be his first. For all I know, you know, and I hate to say it is politically incorrect, but he might have retard strength. He might hit me and I'd die because he never thrown a punch in his life. I said, "You ever fight your brother? Anybody?" No, never had a fight. Before you know, you're a killer.
Knowing what you know, and after that example you gave us, how much longer do you think you're going to be in this scene?
You know, every time I try to pull myself out, I pull myself back in.
Why?
I think, you know, for me, I look at a lot of the players and I deal with them on personal levels now. I used to do the group thing, you know, and I still, you know, tend to at times. But like I look at play, like I'm close to Scar in the MK scene, Slayer. You know, there's a couple of players that I'm close to that, you know, I try to I hate to say educate because it sounds a little condescending, but in a way it's not, because it's like to not make the mistakes that I made. You know, you know, for years I chased this dream that at the end, and I'm not talking about working in the development side, about in the gaming side of it, the player side, you know, this esports side. And, you know, like Nitin said, the FGC is such a minuscule part of esports because not, and they hate to hear it, all of your games are boring. I like Mortal Kombat 1. The rest of the world don't give a rat's ass about it, and they don't care about MK11. This 1,500 Mortal Kombat offline players, when there was 11 million copies sold, but only 1,500 people on a max are considered competitive players. Where is the other 10,900 and whatever it is, 85,000? They don't care. It's easier to sit on here and go pew, 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 with their little pads. I can't even play on a fucking pad. I still gotta play with this shit. I still play with this. I modified it to play on fucking PS4. I could play Rocket. I could play other games on pad. And you want to know something ironic with me? I can't even play on a Street Fighter stick. It's gotta be 5-button layout, or I can't play it. I can't map my buttons on a Street Fighter stick and use them because it's muscle memory.
Right.
And my muscle memory's burnt to that layout. But I think the thing that keeps me here is making sure certain people wind out okay. When there's truly nobody left for me to care about in the scene, is when I'll probably fade away. I mean, I did leave the scene. After Brady and MK4, my 3D era, I left the scene, which was ironic because that Red Saline guy made a James MK account on PS3 or 2 during the 3D era. So I've met people now, and they're like, "Oh, I remember playing you in MK Deception." I'm going, huh? I don't remember playing you in MK Deception. yeah, you a cheap motherfucker. I'm going, definitely not me. I wasn't like, now I ain't gonna lie. I actually cracked open my Deception, and I was like, I still got my character, my created character alive. I made a Hasidic Jewish character. And he has and you can name the weapon, so I called the weapon the Shalom sword. he had Noob's slow black fireball.
Right.
I had Dairu's backdrop. I had Sector's teleport punch. So I would throw the fireball out, would come across the screen really slow, and if you didn't move, I backdropped you, you landed into it. Then I could jump kick, teleport punch. I had Kung Lao's sword that had a spin, like a low spin with it. And then I had, what was his name? The Chaos guy. Havoc. Havoc's neck snap, where he snapped his own neck, and I had that. So it gave me more amplified power. And that was the only thing I did with it. I still have them to this day. And what was cool was you could make, and again, this is before we started censoring again. So you could have like a win saying when you beat them. So my win saying was, "Read the Torah, bitch." And people would be like, "What the fuck?" I said, "I'm allowed to be cheap. I'm Jewish." They were like, "What?" I was like, "Oh, hey." But and it would be funny because I would play like a guy like across the country. "What did you make an Amish guy for?" I'm like, "He's Hasidic Jewish. What are you talking about?"
And with that, James. Oh, I'm sorry. With that, James. You know what? Thank you very much, man.
If you want, I can boot it up and you can actually see him in action. There ain't nobody.
You know what? We'll put that in the extra credits. How about that? And you know what, James? I want to say thank you. With that, I figure let's conclude this right here. We've been talking, what now, Steve? 2.5 hours?
Damn, I beat Nitten?
Yeah. We've been here for,
I got the biggest mouth in the FGC. What can I say?
James, what are your social media outlets for in case nobody knows them yet?
The On Blast Show on Twitter, at The On Blast Show, one word. You could also join the On Blast Show Facebook page. My James MK got banned, suspended, because I exposed somebody for sucker punching Sonic Fox,
Wow.
and they covered for him. Well, he apologized, so he don't need to be punished.
Jesus Christ.
They actually pulled that, and then they said I threatened them. Meanwhile, I got text messages from the guy telling me, "Oh man, you did so much for the Toronto scene. You're the coolest guy ever." I'm like, "Wow, how quick you motherfuckers turn on me." But again, I have to be fair. For me to put myself out there as the place to go to if you want fair treatment, I cannot play favorites. And it's funny because you know what? One time I had to call out Big E, and I told Eric, I'm like, "Yeah, I'll give you some softball questions." He goes, "No, you don't, you asshole." He goes, "You're the one that pushes it out there." I said, "Yeah, but I don't want to come at you that hard." He says, "No, what I did was fucked up. Call it out." And ever since then, I'm like, you know what? If you get stuck in Philadelphia, you call me up. I'll come down. I'll get you. At that point, I said, I don't care. I said, because you're honest. And that's one of the things that you don't see. Again, you don't see that from a lot of people in this scene, is that honesty. That's why, like I said, you see players, and I tell everybody the same thing. Stop labeling people. Stop judging people. Get to know the person. You don't have to agree on politics to be friends. And one of the biggest problems now is we've taken this mob mentality where if you don't agree with me 100%, you're a bad person. Oh, well, how about if I agree with you? I tell people all the time, I'm conservative to a degree. I don't like guns. So right there, I'm already splitting myself from what's considered the typical conservative. Guns do bad things. It's not to shoot rainbows out on the planet. They got one purpose: kill. So I don't like them. But if you say, "Well, I like guns," I'm not gonna go, "I can't talk to you no more." Well, you like guns, all right. Just don't bring them around me. Thank you. We can still hang out. Just don't bring your guns. You're voting for Biden? Okay, go vote for Biden. You vote for Trump? Go vote for Trump. I don't care.
Do what I do. Just ignore the comments.
No, I can't. I got a big mouth. I always got to fucking say something, dude. I always have to say something. I like this new generation of kids that like to engage argument using big words like dichotomy and all that, and the fluctuation of white privilege and this and that. And I go, I think, am I white? I tell them. I said, I don't know. I'm pink. I said, I'm not even white. I said, I got pink privilege. And it's just, it gets to the point where you're arguing with guys that you just, you can't argue with those that don't want to be reasonable. So in a way, you're right. Like, you'll never see me post nothing political or like that anymore, because it's like, I could turn around and go, "Hey, Trump gave me $10,000 for my birthday," and all of a sudden 50,000 comments are telling me they hope I die a bloody death because of it. And it's like, dude, I just, that's why I like to use my Reface app and make myself Trump. Because I know people are like, I want to tell them you fucked up. I'm like, eh.
You know what, guys?
I did Michael Jackson today.
Guys, go over to his Twitter feed, the On Blast Show, and check out some of that stuff. It's hilarious. But again, James, I want to say thank you very much for joining us here. If you want, man, we'll make another episode with you, and we'll talk about all that other stuff. But again, thank you once again from everybody at KPB here. We enjoy your presence here, and I'm sure everybody in the MK community, if they want a nice history lesson, they'll sit down and watch this full episode.
Thank you for having me.
And guys, that was another episode. Please go to KPB FGC on YouTube and check out some of the previous episodes. Again, this is going to be a companion episode for the Summoning and Shock, and in the future, hopefully 9.95 Phil episode, basically giving you the whole history of the MK scene here in the East Coast or the tri-state area. Again, KPB Raphael here. That's James MK. Sir, thank you once again, and have yourself a good evening. Guys, you take care. Until next time. And that was a lot of fun.
This has been a KPB MediaWorks production.